Welcome back to another episode where we read a page from the Narc's Handbook. If you're following along, you'll want to flip to the chapter on holidays, because today we're talking about holiday hoovering. Now, of course, there's no such thing as a Narc handbook, at least not that I know of, but it sure seems like there is, doesn't it? These people can be so incredibly predictable. They're different in many ways, but so incredibly predictable. And to be honest, I never knew holiday hoovering was a thing until I got deep into learning about narcissism and their common traits and behaviors. But once I saw it, obviously I recognized it from my own life, and I know that many of you have too. We're going to explore everything you need to know about holiday hoovering. Stay tuned. Welcome to the Common Ego community. On this channel, we talk about narcissistic abuse, its connection with spirituality, and we attempt to answer the question, where do we go from here? So if that all sounds good to you, be sure you're subscribed and hit that notification bell so you can be notified when I post new videos. Now onto the holiday hoover. So just a really super quick recap for those of you who may not know what hoovering is. I have a few videos, I'll link to those too. But in essence, it's when the narcissist sucks you back into their web. And this could happen with a romantic relationship, or it could happen with a friendship or a family relationship. And in this video, we're going to talk about why that is, how the narcissist hoovers in the holiday, and what to do about it. And for those of you who haven't been hoovered and are wondering why and what that means for you, I'm going to cover that too at the end. Okay, so why do narcissists hoover during the holidays? And it's an easy answer, because it's the same reason why narcissists do anything. And first and foremost, it's to get supply. It is all for the service of themselves. And for a more in-depth answer on why narcissists hoover, I have a whole video on it, so I'm going to link to that. But the reason they hoover during the holidays is because you're more likely to be vulnerable or nostalgic. And ultimately, the narcissist is more likely to get through to you during the holidays than any other time of year. And on the flip side, it's a little bit harder to grasp this part of it. But the narcissist may also be feeling a larger void than usual during the holidays as well. So with a narcissist, we know that they can be very empty people. And as they're surrounded by joyful people, it may serve as a reminder that what they have going on inside is extremely empty. It's the same pattern. They find supply. It's good for a little while. And they start devaluing, abusing, and then they'll toss you aside. The holidays are no different. Okay, so how do narcissists hoover during the holidays? I have a video with 10 hoovering tactics that are still valid during the holidays. I'm not going to repeat those here, I'll just link to that video. But during the holidays, I wanted to point out that the narcissist is so much more likely to use guilt and shame to get you back under their control. And this is especially true if you have a narcissistic parent. They may play on your emotions and try to get you to feel sorry for them. But understand that if you do, nothing's going to change. If you do feel sorry for them, if you do invite them to your holiday, that same cycle of abuse will continue. So another hoovering tactic that a narcissist might use during the holidays is the offer to help. Because we can often be overwhelmed during the holiday season, especially if you have young kids or if you're in charge of planning the holiday get-together with your family or friends or work. If you have a lot to do, and so many of us do during the holidays, the narcissist can become very, very helpful. Suddenly they're popping up and offering to help you with all these things that would actually be really helpful, and you would love to have somebody do them. I have to tell you, they're good at what they do. That's why this works a lot of the time. But understand that this is a hoovering tactic, and you are probably better off without the help. So how do you handle the holiday hoover? And you probably have some ideas. I have 3 tips for you, but before we get to that, I want to talk about one thing you should absolutely not ever do, and that is share anything about your life with the narcissist. This is standard advice for any time of day, any time of year, but during the holidays, it could be especially tempting. Again, if you're feeling lonely or if you're feeling vulnerable or nostalgic, you might be tempted to try and make a connection with somebody who you feel like you've had a connection with in the past, especially when they're being all nice and sweet. But what you need to remind yourself is that if you're feeling vulnerable, if you're feeling especially chatty, like you need somebody to talk to, or you've got to get some stuff off your chest, that right there is vulnerability. You're exposing yourself to somebody who you know cannot be trusted. So go ahead and be vulnerable. Just do it with somebody who you can trust. If at all possible, if you have to deal with this person, if at all possible, answer any questions with one word. How's your cat doing? Great. How's work? It's okay. Don't give any more information than absolutely necessary. And if you find yourself at a family gathering with this person, just do your best to stay on the other end of it. So if you do end up in a situation where they've cornered you and they start asking questions, come up with a reason, any reason. Sorry, I have to use the restroom. Anything to get away from that conversation. Once you get away, strike up a conversation with somebody else. Okay, so the first tip I have for you is one that you've heard before, I'm sure, and probably one that you've implemented in your own life, and that is to set clear boundaries. And if you already have clear boundaries, before the holiday season, remind yourself what those boundaries are and why you set them in the first place. Any time of year, the narcissist is going to try to trample your boundaries. And if you resist, which you absolutely should, they're going to try and make themselves look like the victim. Like you have somehow done something to them by not letting them in. You're not going into their space and telling them what to do. You're not violating that person in any way. All you're doing is protecting yourself. So do not let them make you feel guilty for doing that. You have every right to set your own boundaries for your own life. The second tip I have for you is to understand that this is just another page in the playbook. It's so common for narcissists to come back around during the holidays because they know that people are more likely to be vulnerable. They're going to come back and they're going to seem all sweet and innocent. But it doesn't matter how they seem. Preying on someone's vulnerability is predatory behavior. Doesn't matter their reason. Think of predators in the wild. Their reason is they're hungry, but they're still predators. So set the boundaries and understand that this is how that person is wired. The third tip I have for you is to remind yourself how far you've come. Remember how hard it was to leave in the first place and to set yourself free from this predatory person. During the holidays, you might feel a little bit more nostalgic, but just remind yourself that if you do go back now, you're going to be starting at square one. So you know what's going to happen. Let's not fool ourselves. We've all been through this before. We know the phases. We know the playbook. So all you're doing if you fall into this trap is you're setting yourself back. And you can recover if you do, but it's not really something you want to do to yourself. Now, I know some of you are out there wondering what's going on. I haven't heard from the narcissist in my life. I'm not being hoovered. Maybe you were in the past and suddenly you aren't. Or maybe you never were hoovered and you were waiting for the holiday for it to come around. The holiday hoover is not a compliment. On the contrary, it's quite an insult. After all they've put you through, to think that they would think you would come back around, to think that they could imagine that you could fall for it again, it's quite insulting. So no matter what, whether you're being hoovered or not, understand it's not a compliment, it's an insult. And if you're being hoovered, you need to show that person the door. And if you're not, consider yourself lucky. If you found this video helpful, please let me know by hitting the like button. And if you aren't already subscribed, go ahead and subscribe and hit that notification bell so that you can be notified whenever I post new videos. And I'll see you next time.